The Discontented Ghost, Chapter 9. It was all very well for someone who had not been through what I had been through to talk about getting going, but I was exhausted. The chicken soup had warmed and relaxed me, and the bed had never felt better. Slowly, insidiously, the eyelids drooped. When suddenly I started out of a sound sleep, the first gray light of day was visible through the curtains of my window. With a guilty cry, I sprang out of bed, sneezed twice, and threw on some clothes. Mere moments later, I was in the back hallway of the main house. Breathing hard, I sent my glance darting around, hit-or-miss fashion. But then I got a hold of myself. It was no time to panic. Almost inevitably, my thoughts turned to one of my current heroes. What would Sherlock Holmes do? I was a great admirer of Mr. Holmes, whose exploits I had followed in the newspapers. Within a few more years, the whole world was to be grateful for Dr. Watson for providing his versions of the great detective's cases. It was not hard to imagine the cold, clear, logical, step-by-step process of deduction Holmes would bring to bear on such a problem as mine. What, indeed, would Sherlock Holmes do? Certainly, I told myself sharply, he would not run around like a chicken with its head cut off. An unfortunate simile I immediately banished from my mind with a curse. Sitting down on the bottom step, I folded my arms and gave myself up to Holmes-style concentration. And like the master, not without results. In a short time, with a keen, almost ferret-like expression on my face, with my brows drawn into two hard black lines, while my eyes shone out from beneath them with a steely glitter, I was carefully mounting the staircase. I peeped round the corner into the corridor, still shadowy and dim in the early morning light. And sure enough, a thin ribbon of water stain preserved the path along which the head had rolled. Next, starting at the top and crouched down so that my nose almost touched the boards, I began to examine closely each tread of the staircase. The second tread rewarded my efforts. My own wet footprint was still visible upon it, as well as the smaller ones of the twins, coming and going. Plainly, after finding no trace of me in the hallway, they had returned to bed. To one side of the surface of the tread, however, fortunately not obliterated by any of the footprints, was a small, round, wet spot. Aha! What have we here? I muttered to myself. Unquestionably, it was the imprint made by the head on its first bounce. I examined the next tread and the next. Not until the fifth, however, did I find another round, wet spot, slightly larger than the first. I continued my search, and this time it was the ninth tread that exhibited a still larger, round, wet spot. Bouncier and bouncier. Hardly pausing in between, I moved on, down 5 more steps, a sixth, a seventh, and there, on the third step from the bottom, I found a still larger and rather splattery wet spot. Glancing ahead, I was able to discern the next round wet spot nearly dead center in the rectangular hallway. Standing at the bottom of the stairs, I placed my finger on the third step and then traced an arc in the air to the spot on the floor, and from there a similar arc representing the probable trajectory of the next bounce. Against the far wall, scarcely noticed till now, stood a great Chinese vase, 4 feet tall. My tracing finger headed straight for it. I stared at the vase, then peered into its depths. Reckless Rupert had scored 2 points. I all but dove inside, but of course the wretched head was out of reach. After stretching my arms vainly, I concluded that the only possible solution was either to smash the vase or tip it over and roll the head out of it. Though I would have dearly loved to kick the Cantonese monstrosity to smithereens, I thought I could hear some of the staff stirring in the back regions of the house, and decided it would be more prudent to deny myself that satisfaction and tip it over instead. Before I could touch the vase, however, certain all too familiar sounds sent me diving for cover instead. I had scarcely slipped behind a large tapestry of the Rape of the Sabines before the twins rounded the corner at the head of the stairs. In a fierce whisper, Johnny was saying, "You see, he left a trail of water right to these stairs and then went down them, just like we thought." "Well, come on, let's see where his trail goes." They came slowly down the stairs, obviously examining them on their way. "Those are his footprints." And here are ours. Look at this big round spot. Do you think he slipped and fell on his... No, it's not big enough. You mean his... No, the spot, said Ronnie, and of course a lot of heartless giggling ensued. Here's another wet spot, Johnny reported from the center of the hallway. Hey, it's funny too, this is the last one. So he must have taken a big jump from here and vanished somewhere. Yes, but where? Well, say... What? If he jumped from here, he could have jumped into that vase. You're right. That's just the sort of thing he could vanish into, I bet. And if he did, it'll still be wet inside. I nearly let slip a churchyard groan. Rupert's head was a goner, and there was not one thing I could think of to do about it. Come on, let's look. Boost me up. No, you boost me up. I thought of it first. You did not. John, Ronald. Like the voice of an angel from on high came the voice of their mother. Ma, the twins groaned the homely appellation together. Did those darn birds wake you up again? Her authoritative steps descended the stairs. What are you two doing down here at this hour of the morning? I will not have you running around the halls, disturbing your father and your brother and your sister. How did the hall stairs get so wet? Ma, it was the ghost. The ghost? Have you boys been bothering the ghost again? No, he was bothering us, but we outwitted him. Again, said Ronnie. I knew I had heard some disturbance during the night, and I tried to make your father go and see what it was, but he said, "Oh, it's only the pesky ghost again," and went back to sleep. Well, we shall talk about this later with your father. Right now, I want you to get back to your room and stay there. Oh, but Ma... Now, said Mrs. Otis, and she shooed them firmly ahead of her up the stairs. Blessing her and blessing our boisterous British songbirds, I waited till footsteps and voices had died away in the upper hall. Then I sprang out from behind the tapestry and rushed to the vase, determined not to lose another precious moment before someone else appeared. Well, haste makes waste. In my haste, I once again forgot I was not firmed up to full strength, and like my armor, the ponderous vase got away from me. With a crash, it toppled forward and smashed into 1,000 pieces on the floor. Lord of mercy, what was that? Cried a clacking female voice I knew at once to be Bridget's. And clomping footsteps came swiftly my way from the nearest room. I was so startled I never even thought of vanishing. Instead, I snatched up reckless Rupert's head from amongst the debris, tucked it under my arm, and returned to my hiding place, seconds before Bridget barged in. She stopped short and gasped. By all the saints, 'tis the Chinese vase gone and got itself smashed. What will the master say? Now what could have made that great heathen pot go tumbling over? While Bridget was carrying on in this tiresome fashion, I was being threatened with a nasal disaster of cataclysmic proportions. I felt a sneeze coming on that would have torn the entire tapestry from the wall. Only by drawing upon my ultimate inner resources was I able to hold the sneeze at bay. And just when I felt I had subdued it, however, achoo! Under my arm, reckless Rupert's head had sneezed. I had forgotten that it too had been drenched and might have developed a head cold quite as heavy as my own. Not only did it sneeze, but it sneezed with such violence that the thrust of the sneeze caused the head to push aside the edge of the tapestry and protrude its gargoyle features into the open. The grisly object might have escaped the notice of one of Bridget's outturned eyes, but not both. She took half a look and let out a shriek which, as predicted earlier, was commented on seconds later in the next county. But at least she did not linger. Adding shriek upon shriek, she fled in the direction of the servants' hall, whilst I, regaining my wits at last, shifted gears sufficiently to vanish. After an incident such as that, it seemed wise to lie low for a while, and certainly that was what I felt like doing. I took to my bed, eyes watering, nose running, wheezing and sneezing, and stayed there. With all the remedies there are in her confounded Red Cross kit, doesn't that Otis woman have something for a common cold? I demanded irritably of my nurse during her next chicken soup run. Have you really looked? Yes. Dr. Doble also puts out a cold pill. Never mind. Anyway, nothing beats nature's remedy, said Lady Eleanor, and she shoved some more chicken soup into me. How did the household take Bridget's news? I asked presently. About as you might expect. Everyone felt for sure you were at the bottom of it, of course. The twins envied you greatly. They would have loved so to break a vase that size themselves. Mrs. Otis dosed Bridget with something called Simpson's Superior Soothing Syrup. Wash produced a bottle of Massingale's Miracle Mucilage and assured everyone he would have the vase glued back together in no time. The minister wondered if he could collect insurance on it. Miss Virginia cried, because she had wanted to paint it and hadn't been able to. Lady Eleanor's recital of their reactions fair took the heart out of me, what little I had left. I picked at the coverlet with disconsolate fingers. I give up on the lot of them, I said. Honestly, I've just about had it. As that mysterious voice said to me long ago, I paused, appalled at my own wish, but then blurted it out anyway. I wish I could get away from this place. It was the first time in 300 years that the thought had crossed my mind, but now I knew it had been shaping up ever since the present Lord and Lady Canterville had deserted me, and before I even knew they had done so. For centuries I had been happy there at Canterville Chase, with my Reverend Dampiers and Lady Barbaras and Madame de Tremolax to keep me amused. But now, first the family stayed away, and then the Otises turned up. But these Americans had done what endless generations of British nobility had been able to do. They had taken the bloom off everything. Lady Eleanor gazed at me in astonishment. The hand that held the spoon trembled so badly that drops of hot soup spilled on my bare chest. Ow! Watch what you're doing, Ellie. I'm sorry, but you startled me. Did I hear you rightly? I could not blame her for being astonished. At any earlier date, I should have been astonished myself. But now? Look, Ellie, I said, sitting up on one elbow. The world is changing. Attitudes are changing. People, especially these benighted Yankees, are becoming intolerably pragmatic. After all, nothing stays in fashion forever. Maybe stately homes haunting is on its way out. I tell you, I'm beginning to feel housebound. You mean you'd really like to... Well, isn't there something else I could do? Something that would give me a chance to get away and travel? When you stop and think about it, Ellie, I've never been anywhere except for that one little honeymoon jaunt of ours through France and Italy, and I hated France. All those Frenchmen. I was too late for the Crusades, too early for the outpost of empire. I've always wanted to see more of the world. I can't tell you how many times I've pored over Thomas Cook's brochures in the library. But instead, here I am, mouldering away in the corner of Berkshire, vegetating in the provinces. Lady Eleanor gazed at me and through me with troubled eyes, lost in thought. She took a long time to mull it over. When she had finished, she roused herself with a sigh. I'll look into it, she said, with curious sadness in her voice. I can't promise anything, but I'll look into it. The winds of change were blowing, to be sure, but as is so often the case, not from the expected quarter.